entrepreneurs and professionals of Tampa Bay. Welcome to your hour for getting the information, the tools, and the connections for elevating your business. Welcome to Getting the Edge with Kelly Wilson. And here's your host, Kelly Wilson.
Welcome to Getting the Edge. I'm your host, Kelly Wilson. Thank you so much for being with us today. I know you could be a million other places doing a million other things. So the fact that you decided to be with us here this evening means a lot to us. So welcome to Getting the Edge. Getting the Edge is a product of Edge Business Magazine. If you have not yet, please check out edgebusinessmagazine.com. You can subscribe to our newsletters, which are out weekly. You can also subscribe to our Edge Business Magazine. We just had a magazine launch almost a month ago now. Time goes so fast. This was our New Year not-for-profit, highlighting amazing not-for-profit organizations and the leaders that represent them. If you have not yet, you can check out the digital copy online for free, or again, subscribe and have this personally delivered, or, well, yeah, to your home or office. So definitely consider subscribing to the magazine. We're already at work on our next issue. That'll be launching later May for our spring hospitality issues. So this issue is some fun putting these together, as my team and I really enjoy it, but it's a great opportunity to highlight multiple people on our front cover features. We have 10 leaders, CEOs that we'll be including for the hospitality issue as well. So again, more information on that coming soon. That will launch later May. And really excited, we have a new website. I'm excited about everything today, but we have a new website coming out. Edge is transforming into Edge Media Hub, really so that we can really identify, and everyone can identify with all the different media platforms, really being that hub. I have, for years, been building the Edge community and building the platforms and the foundation, and it was really time to put the data and the analytics and the power behind Edge, and that's really what now Edge Media Hub will be able to provide. So really excited about that transformation and the new site. More details will be coming on that soon as well. We're looking at a live date March 15th, so just around the corner now. So really excited. We've got a new environment that we're in today, and really excited to be here in this new environment. We are in Ybor. Gotta love the Ybor City in Tampa Bay. We are at the Lion's Eye Institute for Transplant and Research. Jason Woody, President and CEO, was featured in our not-for-profit issue. So again, if you've not read Jason's story, please check that out in the latest issue. But again, just a great opportunity. Talking about where we're at. So we're in Ybor, and it's fun. So if you hear sirens, trains, all kinds of things, it's Ybor, and you gotta love it. So that's why you'll hear it. Want to thank our sponsors for allowing us to be here. Thank you to All Trust Insurance, your trusted employee benefits partner. Pilot Bank, thank you. And thank you to WeBeam TV and Tampa Bay Multimedia, the video guru producer John Gaston and his team. Worked with John for many years, and thank you to them. If you are looking for your own platform, if you want something similar to Getting the Edge to provide your message, definitely consider having your own version of Getting the Edge, and contact John and his team. I've worked with John for so many years, highly recommend them. And as John would say, it's pod vision. It's bringing the visual and the audio and bringing it all together. So definitely check them out, tampabaymultimedia.com. I'm pretty sure either that or WeBeam TV for all of his information. Okay, so one of my favorite guests is on with me today, one of my favorite people, favorite women, and I think I say this a little often, but definitely she's been on the show the most times, so that definitely has to say something. Wow. Laura Scott, President and founder of 180 Coaching. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.
Always delighted to be here with you, Kelly. We have such great conversations.
We do, and that is for years now. We had the pleasure of meeting, I want to say 2013-ish,
Something
when I originally started doing some consulting with the Center for Women.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that opportunity and allowing me to meet the people that I did through that time, and you being one of them. And anyone that's watched any of Laura's previous shows, I probably have said this before, but when Edge first launched in 2013, we were the South Tampa Business Alliance.
That's right.
And it was really important at the time to micro niche and so that people understood what we were trying to do. And we started with events and networking and a membership opportunity. But we knew we wanted to grow inevitably at some point. And when the time was finally right, I remember us sitting down and trying to figure out what to call it. And
I think it was the Center for Women. We were sitting
it
out.
was
Yeah.
in the Women's Business Center
Just
there.
brainstorming.
Just brainstorming, and everyone was kind of just kind of spitting out ideas of what they thought. And Laura is the one that said Edge, and done. I mean, it was like perfect, really, at the time. This must be, I guess, soon as we were planning the launch of the magazine and the Getting the Edge show, we knew at that point we wanted to allow for a bigger brand.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was really growing. So thank you.
Oh, you know, you've brought it to life. You've made it the ecosystem that it is.
You know, I'm sure I would have survived, but I don't know what I would have done through these years without your motivation and being that cheerleader for me. And really, even when I thought, okay, like this isn't going to work, like you know, things just this is never going to work, but something inside me always kept me going. But I think it was us having coffee too every so often.
Yeah.
Where you would sit down and it was almost like validation that I wasn't crazy, you know, and you pointed out, I am a little crazy, but I embrace that. I love it. You have to be, I think, to endure.
There's
or be
always a
willing
little
to
crazy
endure.
in business, you know.
Yeah.
It's the spark.
Yeah.
It's the spark where people go, like, if everybody would have thought of that before, you wouldn't have a business. You've got to be just a little off the rails to come up with something that nobody's ever thought of before, that nobody's ever has exploited up to this point.
Yeah. It's interesting.
So good for you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Well, thank you. I mean, just for your support over the years, for always being that cheerleader for me. Because I think, you know, sometimes we have them in our spouses, we have them in our families. We always need someone. And thankfully, my kids have been very supportive. But I really, you know, my family, they're past now. My mom and dad are gone. I don't have that family. Edge is my family, which is kind of looking
Good
back,
for
I
you.
feel like why I created, you know, I guess when you don't have your own family, you look to build one or create one or grow one. I'm not sure what the right word is for that. And that's what so
well, you
Edge
know
has
me,
become my family.
I'm Miss Resilience, right?
Yeah.
And one of the key things that really helps people be more resilient is to build that tribe, right? To build that family. I call it the family of affinity, right? It's not the people that you're married to or your blood relatives. It's the people that you welcome into your life because they support you and they love you and they understand who you are, what your values are, and where you're going.
For you.
Of course.
Yeah.
You know, that's what a good family is all about, you know, and I think that's important to recognize that we can build that tribe, and the stronger our tribe is, the better off we'll be going forward. So you've done a great job. I mean, yeah, the Edge community is your tribe.
You know, and it really, I like that word tribe because that's really what it is. It is that tribe, that family, that network of unity.
Yeah.
Is unit the right word? I said that the other day about something about being unit.
It's
A
you know,
unit is unity.
It's a
the same thing.
community.
Yeah.
I think really what you've built is a resilient community because every entrepreneur, every business owner always hits a wall at some point where
absolutely.
you second guess every decision you made. You start saying, okay, I can barely make payroll. What's going to happen now? Something happens, you know, it takes some market element just kind of throws a wrench in the machine and you have to think, okay, what now? What do I do now?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that tribe that says, you know, hey, we've been here before. this too shall pass.
Well, yeah, and I think so many people think it's just them, like maybe they're
Yeah.
just going through it, or the universe is after them or against them, and really, we can plan. Sometimes being a little naive is good, and I say this on the show too a lot. But it's sometimes, I mean, we can plan and plan and plan and plan, and then life happens,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
you have to be ready and be willing to go through every obstacle as it comes at you, and around it, through it, over it, under it, whatever you have to do, right?
Well, I think that one of the things we've spoken about many times, and I think we were talking about the Failing Forward article, and we were talking about, like, what does it take to normalize failure and make failure your friend? And one of the reasons is, one of the things I've always told my clients, and I tell myself every other day, is there are no mistakes, only course corrections.
I love that.
Only course corrections. And that's really what we're called upon to do as business owners, is understand when we have to make that pivot, and understand that it's not going to go exactly according to plan.
And be ready
Every
for that,
business plan is just a best guess of what we hope will happen, given what we know. But there's a lot of unknowns out there, and a lot of things that we can't anticipate happening. All we can do is create the most robust organization, our business, but also the most robust us, because we are really the most important asset our business has.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that's what I was saying the other day, that with age comes wisdom, and our journey allows us to kind of become or evolve into the beings that we are today.
Yeah.
But if we are able to take away from everything that we've been through throughout our lives, and maybe not even in the entrepreneurial world, I mean, just a little bit of everything. I've had the utmost pleasure of interviewing so many great people, or even sitting down with you, doing all these different interviews. And every time I talk with someone, it's like pieces of a puzzle where your life comes together and you evolve into the people that we become. But we can learn so much from that journey, and just
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, failure is important because it's a contrast to success. And we can't really claim success if we haven't had a dose of failure. Because how do you know you're successful?
Right.
Well, I was here, and now I'm here. And wow, isn't that much better? Whether that success is your cash flow, whether that success is, how many clients you acquired in the last year, or being able to meet and exceed meeting payroll be able to give your employees some spiffs and some
And you have
added
definitely
benefits.
taught me to enjoy and embrace and celebrate every success that we
Every
encounter.
success.
Small, medium, no matter, because we're so much harder on ourselves that
Oh, yeah.
typically we don't look at all the successes the way that we should, or maybe someone from the outside would look at them.
Right.
But we need to celebrate them all, because no doubt they're all worth celebrating.
And we can define your success by, we say, okay, where were you 5 years ago? And, what was the situation? And we can say, wow, I love doing my own accounting. I could probably have a bookkeeper and it wouldn't cost me a lot, but the little amount of time I take doing my own books is such a great feeling for me of seeing, oh, here is where I am revenue-wise. Here is
Right.
the cash flow. Here is, it might not be huge, but as long as I see, forward growth and momentum,
Right.
and diversity of client base and things that I idealize as success for my business, and so, but we often have to think about, okay, what are our success metrics? And the success metrics that you had when you started, years ago, are probably not going to be the same success metrics that you're going to feel important to you today as you scale, as you rebrand. So having sort of that check-in with yourself to say, okay, what are my success metrics going forward? Sometimes it's not going to be 20% more revenue. Sometimes it's going to be, I need to be more resilient in my customer base. I need not to be putting all my eggs in one basket with one or two big clients. So sometimes success isn't going to show up on the balance sheet. it's going to show up in the resiliency of your business and how you're able to pivot and respond to the unknowns out there.
Well, and you have to set those metrics. Otherwise, how do you know how you're doing?
Exactly.
And I think often, especially with smaller businesses, we don't gauge that as well.
Right.
Or we can, sometimes we don't. I mean, and it's very important. And I think that's one of the things too with growth and with knowledge, and as you finally grow, is being able to understand what you need to implement and the metrics that you need to have, just everything in order to take things to the next level. But figuring out and knowing where you're at is a must.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I mean, a lot of the success that you felt is things that are intangible that will never show up in a balance sheet, and that is your tribe, the people that support you. Those things will never show up in the books.
Right.
But they're incredibly important to your success and your ability to be resilient and be able to pivot successfully. And that support system, I think, is one of the key things that I call them sort of the intangibles, but I feel them every day because I feel supported. I feel like I'm in the right place. I feel like I have a community. I feel like I have some place to go to when I am second guessing myself, or I'm going, am I doing the right thing, or is this a good move for me?
Pivoting successfully is something that I've learned is so critical to success. And I always ask everyone, like, what definition of success? Everyone thinks of success differently, but no matter what your definition of it is, in order to get or achieve anywhere close to succeeding, you have to be ready to change your mindset or whatever the universe, your data, whatever it's showing you. We were talking the other day about a client that their price was high and they weren't looking at the data pretty much, which was showing them that the price was too high for the market that they were going after. You have to be able to adjust. You can continue to think, oh well, my price is perfect. Well, if it's not selling, I mean, you've got to make a decision to succeed or fail. And if you want to fail, then pack up and you go. If you want to succeed, then you figure out where you can make that pivot, adjust the price accordingly if we're talking about that particular case, and then move forward and then measure metrics again. Take measurements and see where you're at. And then you continue, stop, how do they say that? Stop, repeat, stop, play.
Rinse, repeat.
Right. It's just, you continue that cycle over and over again. But it's interesting, but you have to be willing to pivot and change course wherever necessary in order to succeed, or you don't.
You don't. And I think if you think about business models and how they evolve, and it's amazing how just a simple little tweak in a business model can make a huge difference. The delivery, we talk about how we deliver food to people. It used to be that you went to a restaurant and you ate a meal, and now everyone is, Grubhub and, getting things delivered. Amazon's delivering groceries. So the ease of delivery and how quickly you can get something to your door has incredibly changed typical food and hospitality, and that whole industry is like rethinking what do we need to do to get our product to our client. And it's not now them showing up at your restaurant necessarily. So there's lots of things going on that are changing how we get product and service to our clients. I remember when I was being trained as a coach, everybody said, okay, you are going to be 50% of your business is going to be on the phone or a video call, Zoom or whatever. And us coaches were going like, really? I mean, how do we see body language? I mean, how do we feel like we're close to our clients? But here we are in 2020, 50% of my business is phone coaching, virtual coaching.
Yeah, do you do a lot like through the video conference?
We've actually gone away a little bit from video, and the reason why is I'm actually a better listener when I'm on the phone. If I can be on the phone with my client and literally close my eyes, like this is me on the phone with the client, that's great. I've got my eyes closed because frankly in video, sometimes there are some visual distractions that will get me. If I'm looking at someone, I'm going, okay, what's behind them? Are they looking at their screen?
There's sometimes a delay.
There is, and I, sometimes you see the cat jumping on the credenza behind them, if they're at a home office, and you kind of gets you off the rails. So I actually prefer phone coaching. I think I'm a better listener on the phone, but this is how I'm delivering so now it really, I have a client in South Africa. I have clients in Canada and Puerto Rico and everywhere. We don't have to be physically in their space to be helpful. And so it really makes my job, it's really expanded my marketplace for my service.
I can imagine.
In incredible ways. And so unfortunately, I wish I knew 50 different languages, and that would expand it even more. But being an English speaker kind of is the only thing that really limits me. I have my clients, we have to share a language. But outside of that, it really has expanded my reach.
It's just technology is just amazing how technology has changed the way we do business, and it has allowed, I think, for us to do business in much different ways. Talking about the instant delivery, my phone completely died the other day, and I got a new phone, and of course, the cases at the store, they're first of all, they're too expensive, and they didn't have anything that I liked. That night I go to Amazon and I found a phone case, oh my goodness, like 60% cheaper, the same brand that I was looking at, and they got it the next day.
Oh, beautiful.
And it's, especially for someone that doesn't like to fight being in the stores a lot. I'm not a shopper. I do not enjoy it. I go in and get out, what I need. So, or buying a book. I mean, it's really changed the way we do business. I am thankful that you've been a part of EDGE since the beginning, and really have been a contributing writer for each of them as well. And it's interesting as we sit down and talk about upcoming issues and what to talk about. One of the ones we did, I think for this most recent one, it was on resiliency, so I want to talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, sure.
But then in the last issue for the first annual celebration of women, we talked about failing forward. And one of the things that I have found through my own personal experiences, as EDGE has been 7 years now, just about, but as a single mom and a business owner, and not necessarily having all my ducks in a row, I came from the real estate industry where it got totally demolished. After a divorce, I didn't have the savings or the platform. I probably had no business going into business for myself, but being naive is somewhat of a good thing sometimes. And I knew it was something I wanted to do. And sometimes our faith can be bigger than our savings account, right? And I just knew I was going to go for it. And sometimes I think there's a bigger pull in the universe that's pulling us that we just, you have to follow. And anyway, but going through what I have gone through over the last decade to 7 years, kind of being where I am today, it's not been easy. And as a single mom and through it all, there are times, where my daughter was eating. I'd make sure, you make sure everybody else is taken care of, but you're not necessarily, and you're sacrificing yourself. Anyway, very much of a challenge. I'm so thankful to still be here, and I kept with it no matter what, and we're in a much better position. But still, going through what you go through to get to where you are today, it almost like I'm still always on the edge of my seat, waiting for the next something to happen or come down. And I would love to learn to relax and be more mindful. And I'm working on that and reading like some books, even in spirituality and different things. But one of the topics that you had written on was failing forward and overcoming the trauma of a business failure. And even if you're kind of almost succeed, what you go through in order to succeed can be
It could be traumatic. And it's kind of a form of post-traumatic stress in a way.
I don't want to take anything away from, military and active members or retired veterans that are suffering from or are dealing with PTSD. But I think it's a trauma of any kind, really. And going through what you go through, especially as a single mom and trying to build your business, we do see there is trauma there. And it's trying to then put that in the past and being able to move forward. And not necessarily be on the edge of your seat all the time.
Well, that's another reason why I like to be my own bookkeeper, as I sometimes need to spend some time with my bank statements to reassure myself that, okay, all is well. There are a lot of times when there have been very lean times, and you sometimes forget that you're no longer in those times, and to the point where you might still be cutting coupons, or you might still be doing you're doing some old habits that they're probably good habits, but they need not to be coming from a place of fear. Like,
Right.
if I don't do this, I'll be living under a bridge.
One thing I read too, and we always talk mindfully together, is if you feel fear, you're not in the present moment. Like if you're there's fear for some reason, then you're not right now. Or if you're, what was it saying? If you're worried about the future, or if you're thinking about the past, then you're not in
the
this
now.
moment. Right. You're not in this moment.
It's true.
So things that I will try to catch myself. Okay, well, if I'm worrying about the future because of what I've been through, and maybe you don't want to have to go through anything like that again, then okay, well then I'm stressing about there. You do zap away that enjoyment of right now, and that's what I'm really trying to work on within me, to be right now.
I think the now is actually can be a really peaceful but very empowering and very powerful place, because that's really where you can change and pivot. You pivot in the now. You don't pivot in the past, and you don't pivot in the future.
We can't change anything.
You can only pivot in the now, right?
Right.
So what you really then have to do is say, what is present here that is new, we haven't seen before, that really begs our response. And so that, knowing what that is really important to business owners and to people in general, is understand what's in front of us right now that is new and different, that we need, that really begs our response. But in a response, not out of a fear response.
Right.
It's really just, okay, let's assess what I call ground truth. It's a military term. Sometimes the generals will say, well, this is what's happening and on the ground. And this is, but the people on the front line are going, no, actually, this is the ground truth. This is what's really happening here. And so it's important then to spend some time going, okay, what's the ground truth in my life right now, in my business? Let's take a hard look at the books. Let's take a hard look at the market. Let's take a hard look at what our resources are. And if you're trying to scale, you're going to need resources to scale. And you're going to need to maybe change the business model a bit. You're going to maybe have to let go of some stale assumptions of what's possible or what's not possible. And that's really, I think the biggest thing is taking those stale assumptions and like putting under the hard light of interrogation and saying, is this assumption still true for me? It probably is not. I can't even remember who I can attribute this to, but there's a quote somewhere that says something like 70% of our assumptions are incorrect. And if we are built our business model and our business plan on assumptions only, then we are frankly screwed. We can't assume. So we have to understand, what are the knowns, what are the unknowns, what are the assumptions we're making that need to be challenged,
Right.
in order to pivot and to take a real clear-eyed, gimlet-eyed look at our business.
I think assumptions can kill us, whatever it might be in reference to in life, whether it's in our business, in our personal life, in any type of realm of anything. Assumptions can be very bad. So you always want the facts. You need to know ground truth, like as you would put it, of what is really happening.
And that's what,
no matter what it's about.
I do as a coach, and I think this is what coaches primarily do. We're thinking partners. We don't tell people what to do, but what we're really good at, if you're a trained coach, one of the things you do really well is challenge your clients' assumptions about things and open up possibilities, open up choices, so that they're just not looking in tunnel vision with hemmed in by a bunch of assumptions that may or may not be true.
Right.
I mean, if they are true, great, let's move from there. But potentially, there's a lot of things that you can also do to keep yourself more in the moment, and that is to recognize the good now, that good that you're experiencing now.
Yeah.
And we often don't get a chance to allow ourselves to just breathe and go, you know what, right now, I'm pretty darn safe. We hear all about this coronavirus threat, blah, 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 blah. I'm sitting here with Kelly Wilson in this beautiful building in Ybor City, and life is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
We are having a great conversation. There's plentiful food, people moving around, safe.
And I like it. I can hear the traffic kind of whizzing by. I love that urban.
Yeah.
That's why I like living in the South Tampa near downtown. I can hear the trains. I love that noise. But you're right, enjoying and listening and being
Well,
right
truly,
here, right now.
because look at the comparison. If you were in China in the hot spot, there would be no traffic outside.
No, I guess there wouldn't be.
There wouldn't be anybody moving around. So, but that's not where we are. We're here, and we're safe, and we're feeding our families. We're going to work. We are free to travel.
One thing that I question myself, because again, okay, so then, we all have these, I'm hoping everyone else has these internal battles within. But so sometimes I tell myself, let go of everything. Just, you're in the here, you're in the now, and you're going to keep moving forward. You had to go through what you had to go through to be where you are today. But nonetheless, you're going to move forward from here. But, sometimes I think, maybe it's good that I still maybe worry or am concerned, because that's always going to keep me going back to on the edge.
Yeah.
Maybe I always need to be that way in order to always keep striving for more or better, or having those high. I hate the word expectations because but having those expectations of myself, or right, if you get too comfortable.
Well, I do believe
maybe?
that our brain is hardwired to imagine the worst case scenario. It's kind of negatively biased that way. So we're always going to have that negatively biased brain saying, well, this is what could happen here. And I always say, mitigate the worst case scenario, mitigate the risk, but really anticipate the best case scenario. And that's what the brain doesn't do naturally. But we as resilient business owners and people need to do, is imagine the best case and spend as much time or more planning for that best case scenario than the worst one. Because when it comes to the worst case scenario, you actually get what you expect.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you're spending all of that time imagining the worst case scenario, you're looking for evidence that it exists. And if you're looking for evidence, it's there. You could find it. You could find evidence for the worst case scenario, whether it's really alarmist, which it probably is. But imagine if you spent as much time or more on the best case scenario and your brain went looking for evidence of that, what you would see. You would see a beautiful world. You would see customers coming in the door. You would see yourself signing contracts for these services, whatever it is.
Surprisingly, I haven't done it in the past, but so I'm talking about reading, and I've been on this spiritual kick and just better, self improvement, just bettering myself and learning and growing. I saw it last weekend, not this past weekend before. I spent putting together a vision board. I have never had a vision board, strangely, because as kind of forward thinking and as resilient as I tend to be or am, I've never had a vision board. So I spent, it took me all day pretty much to work on researching kind of what I wanted and then putting it together. I think it also forces you to really picture the future.
Yeah.
And to really determine exactly what it is that you want. And not just in the next so many years. Because on the board, I kind of have a short-term piece of it, a longer-term piece of it, obviously business and personal. But it's really cool, and it's right in the middle of my dining room, because for me, really, it's, I don't have a lot of traffic coming in the house. And it's my space, and that is, I was going to put it in the bedroom. I thought, why not have it where I'm going to sit and look at it a lot if I'm at home working or in the office. But this way, it's still kind of private. But anyway. I'm kind of excited by it. But every day I find myself looking at it a little bit, and I'm focusing on it. I'm hoping that is going to help me to shift from that mindset of maybe being still in the trauma and then maybe what I've been through, and more focused on the future and creating those desired outcomes. The energy as far as for those.
I think it's really important to do that. My S corp is Salt Whistle Bay. It's a little bay in the Grenadines. I had sailed there one time, and it's just so idyllic. This beautiful little stretch of sand and palm trees. It's just, you just imagine you're in some, beautiful uninhabited isle when you're there. And I literally named my company that because I wanted it to sort of be a vision of, I want to get back there. I want to get back to that peaceful place. And I have since been back there on another cruise ship, a small cruise ship.
Oh, wow.
But I kept a picture. There was a hotel on that little island that they were selling, and I got a picture of the real estate listing with this beautiful beach and stuck it on my clipboard.
Oh, wow.
My cork board at the time. And just as inspiration, because it just said, this is what I want to get back to. I'm working really hard, but I want to get back to that peaceful place where I have the resources to enjoy that beautiful, peaceful beach once in a blue moon, and it can take me away. And I do. I get back to it, or I find something like that beach.
Well, right.
It's easy. We're in the neighborhood.
I would recommend them. Like, I am surprised I haven't taken the time and done it before. I've done scrapbooks throughout my life, but those are from the past. I mean, you're scrapbooking from to keep memories of the past. So this is really that type of thing, but looking at the future focused.
Yeah.
And I, so by the end of the year, I mean, of course, you from a business plan perspective, I mean, you're always looking at your next year's numbers and looking at, but really, I think this forced me to really look forward and really go within on, again, not just for professionally, but personally, what it is I wanted out of life. I think we really need to have focus on that before we know where we're going or how to get there. That's just like, we decide to go to New York. I mean, we don't just get in the car and drive. I mean, we have to set a GPS, or like you have to have a plan. So if you're just going through life and just going through it, how do you know where you're going?
I think sometimes you can plan, you can have a multi-layered kind of vision. The vision is really what you want to feel. So,
well, we've already said that the plans don't work out half the time. I mean, we have to pivot, and you have to be ready to make changes.
So it might be easier to just say, what do I want to feel if I'm successful? I always say that there's nothing I've ever done in my life that didn't start out as a daydream.
Oh, absolutely.
So the first step is really just daydreaming it, right? And tricking your brain into believing that it actually can be for you. And so a lot of it has to just happen from your imagination first, until your brain kind of readies itself to accept the reality of that actual success. And because sometimes it can feel, if you don't do that imagining, and if you don't really believe that you deserve it, the core beliefs are really important. If you don't believe you deserve that success, it won't come to you. It doesn't matter how much money's in the bank account.
Is that one of the quotes, whether you think you can or you think you can't?
You're right.
Right. Is that Henry Ford, I think, too?
I believe so. Good old Henry Ford.
Yeah, he has some great ones. But that is so true. If you don't believe in yourself, who else is going to believe in you either? You have to know or believe and have faith in yourself and your business.
It's important for leaders to feel that, feel that that they can be trusted with power. I think that's where we sometimes, as we grow into leadership roles, we sometimes feel like, the imposter syndrome. Somebody's going to find out I'm not all that, and it'll all come tumbling down. When you really have to start thinking, I do deserve this opportunity. I can be trusted with power. I am a leader, and I'm going to do what's right to the best of my ability. But I will fail. But I'm going to succeed more than I fail. So if you're an investor in the stock market and you're picking stocks, you're not. There's no way you're going to be 100% accurate all the time. You're building in a plan to say, you know what? If 60% or 70% of my stock picks are good, we're golden.
Right.
We don't sometimes do that as business people, though. We expect perfection 100% of the time. And I've heard, we're investing in real estate. Yeah, I've invested in real estate, a lot of my life, and there were some dogs in there. So those were some real bad losses. But thankfully, I picked, some winners, and the winners, offset and more the losers.
I have found that I have learned more from what hasn't worked than from what has. So I think sometimes where it goes back to that point, we're so focused on everything working out.
Yeah.
that if sometimes by things not working out, it kind of goes back to the Thomas Edison quote, 10,000 times. Sometimes by it not working, you figure out how it does work.
Sure.
Or you figure out other ways. I feel like I've learned more from what hasn't worked over the years than from what has. So, and how we need it not to work sometimes in order to appreciate what does work.
Well, I think that's how intuition works, right? Because it through past experiences where you might have stepped in it, or things were scary, where you went where you maybe shouldn't have gone. All of that is, banked in your memory, in your hippocampus and your brain. And so that memory bank says, hey, we've seen this before and it didn't work out. So maybe let's not go there this time.
Right.
So, our brains can serve us in that way, but we don't want to assume that because it happened and it didn't turn out well, that it's going to play out exactly the same. That's an assumption we can't make. So we have to have a little bit of fearlessness going in and just saying, I know this might not look good on paper, but something in my gut says I can do this and I can pull this off.
And that's, I think, what we have to follow sometimes, because once, we kind of mentioned earlier, it's great to be naive sometimes because you don't know, and without those experiences, then you don't know what you don't know. But then as you do go through life or whatever it may be, sometimes I think it can hinder who we are as people, because we almost become a victim of our circumstances,
right?
Versus being able to be a victor in a sense, and embrace what we've endured and just keep going, and being the same person, that we were when we started, because I think that can change us. Society is tough, and just life in general. But it can also be extremely rewarding and an amazing place as well if we allow ourselves. I think
a lot of times most of our doubts and our self-doubts are coming out from us externally. People questioning, like, what do you mean you're going to publish a magazine?
Yeah.
Who are you? And I've had that, early in my coaching career. I started coaching when I was like 33 or 34. I was pretty young. And, people go, well, are you an organizational psychologist? Are you a PhD? And you're coaching execs and CEOs. I said, I was married to a CEO for 23 years. I have a little insight into some of the dark places those leaders go through. And I have some insight in how they remain resilient and how they lead and what's worked and what hasn't worked. And I've spent a lot of time with execs and CEOs to know what they go through. I have a lot of empathy. I have a lot of experience with that. So that's my PhD.
And I think it's interesting that some people, and it was even for myself, you don't realize that other people have the same kind of mental monsters that you are dealing with, as far as the imposter syndrome, or not feeling like you belong somewhere, or not being good enough, or before you walk out and give the talk you're about to have a heart attack. We all battle with insecurities, and for some reason I think we don't think that the other people do. We look at them from the outside, looking at them, and we feel like other people have it all together. And it's just not the case. Most of us, we're all dealing with something. We're all afraid of something. We all have our own set of, I was going to say issues. I guess maybe I'll use characteristics.
Yay.
But we all are dealing with something. We all have, and I think, I know you've helped enlighten me to the fact that I'm not the only one that deals with which helps on the platforms, whether it's in the magazine or the shows or anywhere. I'm able then to talk about what I'm going through, because I don't mind sharing, and we can all learn from my craziness or what I'm dealing with, because I know it'll be helpful to others. I'm not the only one going through this. But you've helped me.
As a coach, I do help people normalize their feelings, their insecurities. Everybody's a little insecure about certain things and feeling, but overcoming the insecurity and learning to trust yourself and trust your decision making is really important. And I think I've come to a point in my own life where I really do trust my decision making way more than I did when I was 20, obviously. And that's where you want to get to, is feel that And if you really are anchored into your values, and your values are what drive you, I find that if I want to live a regret-free life, the easiest way for me to do it is to make decisions that honor my values 100% of the time. Not easy. Have I done that? No. But I almost, if I'm making a decision that's incongruent with one or more of my top 5 values, I now get a little feeling in my stomach that says, "Whoa, this doesn't feel right." Like,
and when you talk about top 5 values for yourself, you're determining like what is most important for you to live by.
yeah, I actually start a lot of my coaching engagements with what they call a values clarification. So my clients sit and I give them a whole list of like 40-something values. They can add their own, and we come up with their top 5. And values change over the course of life. So you want to be doing this thing maybe every 10 years, because as life progresses, your values change. But being able to make decisions congruent with your values, I think, is a really key thing that is important if you want to live your life, not regret-free, because that's probably impossible, but pretty close to it. And, you know, because I may have made a decision that didn't turn out that well, financially maybe, but if I look back on it, I go, you know, I made that decision because it was congruent with my values. And I took a hit financially, but I still feel good about it. And even as leaders, I say, you know, people might not agree with your decision, but if they understood that you made that decision based on your personal values, they can't really argue with that. They can't really argue with values. They can say, you know what, I didn't agree with that, my boss's decision, but I understand why he did that. It was congruent with his values. And that's really how you build trust as a leader. If you would make decisions congruent with your advertised values, and if every business did that and lived their mission statement 100% of the time, they would earn trust. And that's really all we're doing, is being trustworthy, not only to other folks.
True to our word.
Yeah, but trustworthy to ourselves. You know, to say, you know what?
So true to our word, to ourselves and others.
Yeah, I'm not going to say I'm going to get it right 100% of the time. I'm going to be happy if I get it right 75% of the time.
You know, I think it's interesting, and one thing even with myself, we only know what we know at the time that we don't know, maybe however you say that, but it's so interesting for us, and that's one of the reasons where it gets scary with the past stuff. But we can look at decisions we made in the past, but of course, if we look back on now, when we have so much more knowledge about it, we've saw outcomes, and then we try to second guess why we did this or how we did that. It is such a you make the decisions based on the knowledge you have at the time, and just sometimes I'm better now with it on my own, really trying to put past things behind me, but I know from me talking with other people, they still struggle with that sometimes, and regretting certain decisions that they've made in time, and you can't allow yourself to do that, because you can't look at something maybe you've said or done with now 10 years of knowledge that you maybe didn't have 10 years ago.
So I was in Sweden with some of my colleagues from conversational intelligence. We were building some new modules, and we actually built a module for taking the fear out of failure. And one of the things that we added into this module was some video of what they call F-up nights. I won't say the full word because we're on TV. F-up nights are real. They are actually business leaders being totally vulnerable, getting up on stage and saying, this is how I screwed up. This is my...
Oh, I love that.
And everybody learns from that, right? And it is, I can't wait till we maybe have one of these in Tampa. Maybe we should just organize one.
Yeah, maybe we should.
We could. You know, that'd be great.
Well, it goes back to me saying we learn more from what doesn't work than from what does. So it's fun to kind of laugh at ourselves, you know, and it's a way for us to release some of it and to share that with other people of what didn't work.
I was brainstorming with a client who leads virtual teams, and he was having a hard time, you know, engaging his team and admitting that they had made mistakes and that, you know, how to learn from those. Excuse me. And I just said, you know, why don't we, you know, because they're on Slack and they communicate different ways online. And I said, why don't just hashtag epic fail and have people share those? And they actually really embraced that. And to the point where they were one-upping each other on like, I got a great epic fail.
You think that was bad, right? Wait till you hear this.
And I thought that was great because then we've just normalized failure. We made failure fun.
Right. Well, and something that you're okay to talk about. Yeah.
Exactly.
Versus something that you're ashamed of or don't want to talk about. And I think that is where it's kind of cool to watch how the entrepreneurial world or society or our community or communities have evolved some, is where we're willing to talk about what maybe mistakes that we made, and we're willing to learn and share them so that other people don't have to go through them. Although I still am a firm believer that so much we have to go through on our own to learn to kind of get to where we need to be. But at the same time, I love that idea.
Epic fail.
Epic fail. I love it. Something to think about. That may be in the next Edge newsletter. And that's where it's been fun. Just switching topics real quick. We've got our, we do our fun events with the magazine each year or after each issue. So 3 big events. But we're also looking forward to our first annual leadership conference. I believe October 21st, later in the fall. But it'll feature people that have been on our front covers over the last 5 years, and just really an all-day event where we'll talk about just growth, leadership, and what they've learned, and successes and failures, and even epic fails. But I think that'll be a great opportunity where we can implement just something new and different. But I definitely like this idea too. I have to figure out a way to use that. And that's why I love talking to you. We come up with all these ideas, and I have all these light bulbs that start flashing. So one of the things, I think that when we went back on just overcoming kind of PTSD, and so I think we've shared a lot with ways to do that. Resiliency, and one of the issues we talked about, I think it was the most recent one, where we talked about just deconstructing resiliency.
Right.
And so it kind of goes back to your those core, what'd you call them? Value clarifications. So does that kind of tie into that?
There's a lot of things that really, if you deconstruct resiliency, it's a lot of things personally. I have an assessment that actually you can deconstruct resiliency as an individual, but as a team. And they're different components of resiliency when you talk about teams. Teams, for example, one of the elements of resiliency is building capacity. But that's true even if you're a solo entrepreneur. But your personal resiliency has a lot to do with building networks. Like we talked about building the tribe. Building networks is really important for personal resiliency. Same thing is managing your energy, figuring out when you need to just be still and be, calm, and when you need to really be 100% full throttle, and knowing when is appropriate to be that type of energy. And I manage my energy as an introvert by giving myself enough alone time, so that when I am expected to be on, I literally, when I cross the threshold of a door, I'm checking my energy. So what kind of energy do I need situationally for this moment? If I'm walking into a networking event, if I'm speaking at a conference, I'll need a different energy than if I'm just sort of working on some strategic planning for my business or building a workshop. So just being able to be aware of the energy that's required. The other one, I think, is really just getting support, having a support system around you.
Well, and I think
that's really important.
You can go back to, and you're talking about energy, making sure that you're surrounding yourself with good energy.
That's true.
Avoiding negative energy at all costs. I mean, and the only way I have been able to persevere and to continue on a resilient path is to avoid all negativity altogether.
Yeah.
You have to put blinders on. I don't care what you have to do. I even stopped watching the news, world news. I mean, whatever, local news for a while, just in order to almost trick my mind into everything is fine. And starting to believe that, because anyway, so
No, I think you're smart, because media outlets have gotten really, really good at triggering your fear place in your brain by virtue of alarmist headlines and alarmist sort of video clips and sound bites.
Well, and I think it depends what state you're going through. If you're at a very low energy kind of spectrum, and you're more vulnerable to being influenced in some way or taking in, then you've got to watch that.
Well, self-care is huge, and resiliency. And I've talked about that many times about like how we find time to just sort of chill and sleep and get good sleep and feed, get good food and have a diet that, will. I'm always like having a little gratitude moment in the morning that my body is still keeping up with me. I have had a lot of friends who've had health issues, have knee replacements, and rotor cuff and this, that, and the other thing, and I'm going like, my God, this body is still like keeping up. Good for you, Just being appreciative, I think, is important.
Gratitude is
the gratitude piece of it is a great thing. But self-care is important. I don't know that anybody, going back to, you are the most valuable asset in your business if you're an entrepreneur. You cannot, if you had a delivery service and you didn't keep that car, with some fresh oil and finely tuned, you don't have a business. Same thing with your body. So self-care is really important, and it's not just food and exercise. It's sleep, it's downtime, it's being able to laugh and enjoy and find some peace.
And it's so important, and I didn't do such a good time with, or I didn't do such a good job with the self-care initially. I think sometimes we're so focused on the business and our kids and everyone else around us. But again, you get there when you get there.
Yeah.
And I've gotten better with that over time as well. But the readings helped. Obviously, our talks, like I said, I don't know if I'd be here where I am today without kind of your motivation and pep talks through the last 7 years. But also just reading and just I always want. I think once you learn, you don't have all the answers and you don't know everything, is when you become a sponge and you just keep learning and learning and learning and you just want to take it all in, and that's I feel like I'm in the best position possible to always be sitting with great people like yourself where I'm constantly learning.
Yeah.
But wow, the time goes so fast. Laura,
I know.
thank you so much for being here.
You are so welcome.
I know we'll have you on again real soon. Laura Scott, definitely check out 180coaching.com for more information on Laura. Again, you probably get tired of hearing me say it, but thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all you do.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you. Go and make sure you check out edgebusinessmagazine.com. Consider subscribing to the magazine. Get your custom printed copy sent directly to your home or office. Definitely we love the support, and thank you so much for being here. And any questions, info@edgebusinessmagazine.com. Until next time, never stop dreaming. Thank you.